The diplomatic chamber fell silent as Queen Hazal's words echoed through the crystalline walls of the Zephyrian mothership. Ambassador Denial Chen straightened in his chair, his weathered face betraying nothing despite the thunderbolt that had just struck his memories. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty," Denial said carefully, his diplomatic training warring with the sudden flood of recollections. "Could you repeat that?" Queen Hazal's 6 graceful arms gestured in what humans had learned was the Zephyrian equivalent of a gentle smile. Her iridescent carapace caught the ambient light, casting rainbow patterns across the negotiation table where the peace treaty lay unsigned. 23 years ago, during the siege of Kepler 442b, she said, her voice carrying the musical quality that made Zephyrian speech so distinctive. A young human soldier found a wounded Zephyrian scout trapped beneath debris from a collapsed building. The human was bleeding from multiple wounds, surrounded by enemy forces, with every reason to leave the alien to die. Denial's breath caught. The memory hit him like a plasma blast, the acrid smell of burning metal, the weight of rubble, and beneath it all the desperate clicking sounds of an injured enemy combatant. But instead, Queen Hazel continued, rising from her seat with fluid grace. This human spent precious time freeing the trapped scout. He used his own medical supplies, shared his water ration, and carried the wounded alien to safety through hostile territory. The human asked for nothing in return, not even the scout's name. The other diplomats in the room, both human and Zephyrian, watched in stunned silence as the Queen approached Denial's position. Her compound eyes, each the size of a human fist, studied his face with an intensity that made him feel exposed. "I remember," Denial whispered, the words escaping, before he could stop them. "You were just a scout then, so young. Your wing membrane was torn and you kept making this sound like wind chimes in a storm." "A distress call," Queen Hazel confirmed. "I was certain I would die on that battlefield, another casualty in a war that seemed to have no end. But a human, a species we had been taught to fear and despise, showed me mercy when I deserved none." Denial stood slowly, his mind reeling. "You were reconnaissance for the attack on Colony 7. If I had left you there, thousands of your people would still be alive," she finished for him. "Yes, the intelligence I carried would have ensured the colony's destruction. By saving me, you signed the death warrant for your own kind." The human delegation shifted uncomfortably. This was not the direction anyone had expected the peace negotiations to take. Admiral Reeves, seated at Denial's left, placed a warning hand on his arm. "Your Majesty," Admiral Reeves interjected, "surely we should focus on the current—" "No." Queen Hazal raised one of her arms, her voice carrying absolute authority. "Let me finish. Denial Chen. Yes, I learned your name later. Your act of compassion that day changed everything. Not just for me, but for my entire understanding of humanity." She moved closer, and Denial could see his own reflection multiplied in her faceted eyes. "I returned to my hive with more than intelligence about your defenses. I brought back something far more dangerous to our war effort: doubt." "Doubt?" Denial asked. "How could I convince my Queen Mother to destroy a species capable of such inexplicable kindness? How could I lead attacks against beings who would risk everything to save an enemy?" Queen Hazal's arms spread wide in a gesture of helpless wonder. "For months I argued against every major offensive. I was labeled a traitor by some, a coward by others. But you kept fighting," Admiral Reeves pointed out. "The war continued for 15 more years." "Because my voice was one of thousands," Queen Hazal replied. "But it was a voice that had been changed by human compassion." And slowly, very slowly, others began to listen. Each act of mercy your species showed, each prisoner you treated with dignity, each wounded enemy you healed, instead of executed, it all added weight to my arguments. Denial sank back into his chair, overwhelmed. The humanitarian protocols, the prisoner exchange programs, all influenced by that single moment on Kepler 442b, Queen Hazal confirmed. "You planted a seed of peace, Denial Chen, when you chose to save rather than condemn. It took decades to grow, but here we stand today, ready to end this war forever. The queen returned to her position at the head of the table, but her posture had changed. Where before she had carried herself with the formal dignity of a ruler, now there was something warmer, more personal. I have spent 23 years wondering if I would ever see that young soldier again. When your delegation arrived and I saw your name on the roster, I knew. The universe has a sense of poetry, it seems. Denial looked down at the treaty before him, its terms suddenly carrying weight beyond political considerations. All these years, and you never forgot. How could I forget the moment I learned that enemies could become friends? That mercy could triumph over hatred? Queen Hazal picked up her ceremonial signing stylus. You saved my life that day, Denial Chen. Today let us save countless others. As they both signed the treaty that would end the longest war in known galactic history, Denial realized the profound truth in her words. Sometimes the smallest acts of humanity could echo across decades, transforming not just individual lives, but entire civilizations. The war was over. Peace had begun with a single act of compassion on a forgotten battlefield, carried in the heart of a young Zephyrian scout who grew up to become a queen.